Welcome to Galaxy Tenants, an Earthbound podcast from the Milky Way galaxy. My name is Jay Picard, and co-producing this episode is my wife, Carly. Galaxy Tenants will be a podcast without format and will feature stories, conversations, and timely topics. We'll output a handful of episodes to start, and the podcast will take shape as we go. Down the road, we intend to have call-ins, interviews, and guests. Normal folks talking about their experiences, musicians, artists, doctors, maybe even the mailman or my cat.
Welcome back to the apartment for Galaxy Tenants. Episode 2 features
a story from our time in Black Rock City at Burning Man.
Carly will teach us how to make her galaxy-famous banana bread.
And we have a brand new track from Textiles.
As well as a Pearl Jam album review from Nicholas Stock. Interestingly, during the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, a lot of companies have not only stopped doing business, but they've also switched gears into creating new products such as ventilators, masks, shields, all kinds of things. I know General Motors out of Detroit is now making ventilators. I know Tesla ended up making a bunch of ventilators, and a couple of the hockey equipment companies, and one of which is, I believe, CCM, who makes hockey helmets and visors, are now making protective shields for doctors. And
as well, there's a local glass blower who is now blowing glass for certain parts of ventilators as well here in Colorado.
Yeah, different, I think, hose attachments so that they can separate
the tube onto maybe. Or...
Yeah, and I think they're able to separate it and get multiple uses out of the same ventilator. I think they're able to accommodate a couple different patients. I'm not sure the exact number. One of the things I wanted to talk about is, Carly, you have a company called Thrive Therapy that makes neck wraps, which are flaxseed-filled microwavable neck wraps that are really great for sore muscles, sore back, things like that. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, you had to shut down your shop on Etsy, or you chose to shut down your shop on Etsy until there was a little bit more information about how the virus lives on different materials. But as of recently, because of the new suggestions and guidelines in the United States, for some reason the CDC and our government was pretending that masks didn't work and were ineffective as we watched the rest of the world wear masks, and the professionals wear masks and try to get as many as they could to protect doctors and nurses. As of recently, they're now telling citizens to wear masks, and while your company is shut down, you've started to make masks.
I have. They are washable, so that helps with the COVID or coronavirus living on fabrics and materials. They are in no way, shape, or form replacing N95 masks. They are basically to cover those if you are a medical professional, or they are for the general public to wear when going out grocery shopping or necessary trips.
I guess any coverage is better than none. I think That's the thought process. Was it difficult for you to, or better yet, what was the process like of taking something that you hadn't created before and now starting to produce these items?
At first, I was really bummed that I'm sitting in my shop doing this versus what I like to do, which is baby bibs, burp rags, the microwavable neck wraps, which are something I've used for decades in my business and whatnot. But
the neck wraps are my favorite of your products. I find that the baby bibs don't fit me well, and the burp cloths they don't clean up as big a mess as I usually make. So.
Yeah, no, I need to make them much larger for you. For the future.
Was it difficult to take a design that you were unfamiliar with, or where did you get the design, and how did you learn to create these items, and what drove you to do it?
It wasn't difficult at all. I enjoyed it. I have so much fabric and scrap pieces from having my Etsy shop open for about 6 years. So I dug through that, found a tutorial online, had some pieces of elastic lying around, which are quite the hot commodity these days. I ordered some about 3 weeks ago, and it arrived today. I ordered some more to replace that because I feel like I'm going to go through 20 plus yards of elastic I was able to order pretty quickly, and the next arrival is estimated for middle of May. Today is the beginning of April.
I think that was one of the reasons, too, why there was such a demand for masks from you as well. But you had a handful of people reach out knowing that you make these kind of products. I think because when they went to order masks online, they found the same thing with shipping, that it was out till May or even further. And, people do need to leave their homes in the next month or two. So, I think one thing that's really cool that you're doing is a quick turnaround, whether it's a touchless pickup outside for friends or,
I can ship them as well.
Without leaving the house. You have
Yeah.
everything you need here to do that, which is really great. One of the things I think is kind of cool is that as you're making these masks, there's all these different designs because you've spent years shopping for all these different fabrics and different patterns. And one of the first ones I saw you make was a fish pattern that I'm sure some of our hippie friends would enjoy. But
It was the first one to be requested as well for our friend who is a nurse. So I mailed that out to her to wear, obviously, over her N95 mask while she is in the hospital. But it's her favorite band and one of, so.
I saw you had some different, colorful patterns, and I think that's cool too. It's not just some plain Jane kind of depressing thing. It adds a little splash and a little color to an otherwise depressing situation.
Yeah. I've been collecting different fabrics for years to cater to people's interests and wants, and team logos, floral, kids designs, character fabric.
And do you basically have all the materials that you need in your home studio office?
My shop?
Yeah, your shop. Do you have everything you need here, or
I do for now.
Yeah, and as far as sourcing the supplies, you have access to everything else, even if it is a kind of long turnaround on shipping, eh?
Yeah, I'm able to get some supplies through different fabric stores online. Last week, things are changing so quickly. Last week, you were able to do curbside pickup at different fabric stores locally. Now I believe they've been shut down and are only doing online orders. So that's why my elastic took about 3 weeks to get here, and the next elastic order will take about another 5 or 6. But for now, I have everything I need, and I'm just using a lot of scrap fabric. You can also use T-shirts and, rubber bands, bandanas, all kinds of things at home to make these. But for me, I'm set with what I need for now.
I think it's really cool that you've taken lemons and turned it into lemonade, and that you're able to still produce some items that are essential items for folks, and I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. I'll be donating quite a few to the hospitals locally, but I'm really enjoying making these for now, and times are changing, things are weird right now, and that's going to be the new norm, is wearing masks. So
I'm grateful because I have an ugly face, so anything I can do to help. I usually grow a thick beard to cover up a lot of it, but because the whole coronavirus thing, I've had to shave my beard off. So anything I can use to cover my face, in addition to the N95, some goggles or something,
Stop.
Anyways, I think it's really cool, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I was raised in a small desert town outside of Reno, Nevada called Lovelock, which happens to be in the same county as Burning Man, an annual arts gathering held in the Black Rock Desert. For 1 week each year, Black Rock City, the city that Burning Man attendees create, is the third largest in the state of Nevada. People come from all over the globe to Pershing County, and as a teenager, I watched caravans of burners stop in our community to stock up on supplies at our local grocer. I remember seeing a VW bus with sparkly hula hoops and bikes wrapped in faux fur hanging off of the back as the driver, who had long dreadlocks, loaded up recently purchased goods and several gallons of water. I was always fascinated by where they could be headed and how far they had traveled. Through a chance encounter with one of the founding members, I was gifted a pair of tickets to attend my first Burning Man experience in 2004 and have had the pleasure of revisiting Black Rock City on 10 separate occasions. Our time in the desert is an escape and a reconnection of sorts. We find the art inspiring, the community uplifting, and the elements challenging. I hope you enjoy one of the more bizarre tales from our adventures and stay tuned to future episodes for more stories from Black Rock City.
This is a short excerpt from my 2014 Burning Man article that was featured on musicmarauders.com. As the sun set, we took a quick breather, decorated our bikes as best we could with glowing objects and a box of wine, and headed down the 5 o'clock road towards the playa for our first glimpse of the chaos. Arriving at Esplanade, we came to a stop, taking in the incredible scene that had presented itself. Lights flashed in every direction, explosions and fire lit up distant scenes, and lasers extended across the horizon, all while folks on bikes, feet, pirate ships, and dragons headed every which way. It was the most euphoric scene that we had ever witnessed, and it took a few minutes to take it all in. On our right was a towering contraption that converted the notes of a piano or synthesizer into electrical currents that flashed brightly while sounding out the notes being played. On our left was a sort of bumper car racetrack, with folks in the middle section swinging dust-covered pillows at the mini-cars pedaling by. We decided that instead of heading down Esplanade, past the clubs and semi-permanent art exhibits, that we would head straight out to the open playa to see what sort of nonsense we could discover. One of the first installations that we encountered had a large neon sign that read "Boring," which hosted a DJ and a decent-sized dance party surrounding it. From there, we rode across the open playa towards the man, who was surrounded by tents that were referred to as the souk. The man was huge from the ground up, and the tents created a very gypsy-esque vibe that offered a variety of stimulation, from the mirrored rooms to fortune tellers and large backlit art. It did indeed feel like a caravansary in the middle of the desert. From the man, we headed down the torch-lit road to the temple. As we grew closer, the finite details became more apparent. This creation had taken a lot of time and energy to output, and its fragile feel reminded us of the fact that it was temporary. We passed over an arched bridge into the courtyard of the temple, where people sat quietly along its outer fence. Inside the temple, the vibe was heavy, with photos of folks that we've lost along the way, poems, and messages strewn about. In the center, under a large wooden chandelier, burners prayed, meditated, and held on to one another, many crying. Being that our energy and excitement was high from our first experience of the year on the playa, we departed the temple, making our way towards a tall LED tree that flashed through different colors in a beautiful display. Looking off to our right, we spotted the dimly lit porta-johns. The colorful tree would be our beacon for the restrooms on the playa for the remainder of the week. Following our emptying of wine, we rode towards Embrace, a massive wooden structure of two people hugging. As we pulled up, a flashing LED ghost from Pac-Man pulled between us and Embrace. As the art presented itself, we appreciated it with open arms and inquisitive minds. After exploring the build of the Pac-Man art car, we made our way into the hugging structure, which was packed with people climbing up and down wooden staircases and through wooden passageways. On the ground level of one of the beings was a large metal heart that hung from the ceiling. In the other, a fiberglass heart that was beating and glowing. The installation was massive and impressive, and we couldn't wait to see it burn later that week. After seeing 3 of the larger, more prominent staples, we let improvised fate be our guide and headed off at random. We eventually came upon a large, rickety-looking pyramid of ladders covered in people trying to get to the top, then navigate a safe return to the playa. We locked up our bikes so that a confused or disoriented individual didn't jump on and ride off with them as we began to climb the structure. From the get-go, you could feel its unintentional sway, and with each grab of a railing, its loose jiggle. Around us, we could hear discussion of people who had fallen off earlier in the day, whether true or not. Back on the ground, a group of riders approached in white fur coats aboard what appeared to be surfboards on wheels, spitting erratic colors from patterned LED lights. What happened next was by far one of the weirdest things that we experienced during our week at Burning Man. We rode towards a gold-domed structure, feeling drawn in its direction. We parked our bikes outside and walked through its large open doors. Inside, it became clear that it was a library with a ton of books on tables and shelves. I reached for a book from a table on my right and opened it up. Its pages were blank. I picked up another from the same table, and its pages too were blank. I turned around and reached for a book off of one of the library's packed shelves and opened it. We glanced down to see a page full of writing, and in shock, we stood silently staring at it. One specific word jumped out at us immediately. Picard. My last name on the page was the last thing that I expected to see. It was a quote or entry from Star Trek. Our minds were blown. We scratched our heads, had a laugh, and quickly moved along into the night.
Today we are in the kitchen making high-altitude banana bread. For this recipe, you will need 4 tablespoons of butter softened, 2 eggs, 2 to 3 bananas very ripe, 2/3 cup of sugar, 1 1/3 cup of flour, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. As well, you can add an optional half a teaspoon of cinnamon and chocolate chips or walnuts. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Combine butter, eggs, sugar, and mashed bananas in one bowl. Combine flour, salt, baking soda, baking powder, and cinnamon in another bowl. Mix wet and dry ingredients together until blended. If you'd like to add optional ingredients like chocolate chips or walnuts, I stir in about half a cup at this point. Pour dough into a greased loaf pan and bake it for 50 minutes on 350. Growing up, my mom used to make banana bread often, and one of her tricks was to add brown sugar sprinkled on top of the dough before you place it in the oven.
So it's been about an hour, and I can't wait any longer for it to cool off or anything like that. I like it warm right out of the oven, but Carly makes me wait a little bit before we dive into it, so we're going to take our first bites. That's good banana bread.
Thank you.
Enjoy this review of Pearl Jam's new album, Gigaton, courtesy of Nicholas Stock.
Pearl Jam is back at it with their 11th studio album, Gigaton. In conjunction with the release, they announced a US and European tour that has subsequently been postponed after the full extent of the COVID-19 pandemic became clear. It seems that Pearl Jam was ready to reignite their still burning fire in 2020, but alas, fans will have to be content with the studio output for now. Gigaton is their first LP since 2013's Lightning Bolt, which was praised critically as Pearl Jam's triumphant return to the sound that made them a household name in the first place. Gigaton continues with the heavier, in-your-face tone that fans have come to know and love since the early days. The foreboding Paul Nicklin photograph of the melting ice caps, which graces the cover, acts as the first indication that these songs are about more than shaking off the shackles of fame. In fact, the term gigaton is a unit of measurement equal to 1 billion tons, and it's how scientists are measuring the amount of water being expelled from the poles currently. The ethereal tone, introducing Whoever Said, gives a false sense of wonder before the listener is slapped in the face with Vedder's vocals backed by his stalwart brothers in Pearl Jam. Rolling Stones writer Corey Grow called it grown-up grunge, and I think that fits. We're on to the next phase, and Pearl Jam is celebrating all that made them who they are musically. Superblood Wolf Moon, one of the early singles off the album, features some incredibly satisfying riff-heavy jams and a pop sensibility that seems to be ever-present in Pearl Jam songs. Dance of the Clairvoyants, another single, again reminds us that bigger things are at play currently here on planet Earth. Quick Escape is some sort of globe-trotting post-apocalyptic shredfest that attacks the senses. All Right is the break this album needs after the onslaught of the first few songs. But this isn't a throwaway track. It's perhaps the most poignant, and shows a wisdom and self-reflection that was not obvious in previous releases. 7 O'Clock is a wordy mouthful for Vedder, and one of the flattest on the album. Never Destination steers the ship back on course with its straightforward rock tone and amazing execution from guitarist Mike McCready. Drummer Matt Cameron penned The Long Way, and this song is heavy on rhythm. Gigaton shifts gears with the Stone Gossard penned Buckle Up, which takes on a bouncy, almost playful quality. Comes Then Goes is perhaps my favorite song on the entire album. It shakes away the need to be heavy for the sake of authenticity, and the lyrics reek of maturity. Sonically, the transition to Retrograde is masterful. This song takes a God's eye view on the planet and delivers us a stark warning. Even the term retrograde means moving backward. The album closes with the haunting River Cross, featuring a Victorian pump organ recorded during a session in 2015. The rock-centered side A, juxtaposed against the slower, more lyric-driven side B, gave many critics their only complaint. Gigaton is a bit uneven, but overall it's an amazing snapshot of a band embracing who they are and writing songs that carry meaning to their aging fan base. Bands either flare up and burn out, or they find true satisfaction in the sounds that made them popular. After a relatively long hiatus from the studio, Pearl Jam has made a triumphant return and a stellar record. They continue to be the torchbearers of true rock, and in these crazy times they are a voice of reason. You can stream Gigaton wherever you listen to music, and I highly recommend you give it a chance. It may be some time before Pearl Jam can get back to doing what they do best, playing live.
Enjoy this brand new track from Textiles titled New Ride.
We want to thank the doctors, nurses, grocery workers, truckers, and all of the essential workers across the country that are keeping America afloat. Thank you.